Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our virtual participants. My name is Masamba Choi. I'm leading the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub, and I would like just to welcome you all. Very pleased to have you here with us for this session that will focus on the technology mechanism, the tech, and the CTCN. So I will now give the floor to Kirsten Dunlop, who will be moderating the panel. Kirsten, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Masamba. Okay, can I call the panelists up here? So we have Cathy, we have Dietram, we have Surachai, and Matt Kennedy, I believe we're online. Just checking that you can hear us.
I can hear you fine.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay. And Surachai, you're on his way? Okay. So we are here to get very concrete and talk about the important role of innovation. And Carlos, I'm just needing to make sure we have one other person joining us. Talk about the important role of national systems of innovation and national systems of innovation with a focus on thinking about technology, digitalization, social change, economic change. So very, very appropriate in following through on what we've been discussing this morning on how do we go from the in-principle question of closing the gap between commitments and reality to the ground truthing in terms of systems, ecosystems of innovation capacity and innovation solutions development. Matt, we're going to start with you, please, with some comments to open the session, and then we have a series of questions that we'll work through with each of the panelists.
Thank you very much, Christian. I've been asked to share some slides in terms of the program of work for the Climate Technology Centre and Network. So hopefully the technology will work. If not, I can just talk through them. So let me know if you can see this on screen.
Yes, we can. Nice and clear. Actually,
okay,
Matt, just 1 second. I'm going to suggest that, in fact, we take up a front row seat so that we can see your slides as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're good to go.
Thanks very much. So I won't keep you too long. It's my pleasure to be speaking today in the Innovation Hub as part of UNFCCC at COP27. The focus of today, as you well know, is on innovation under the UNFCCC process. And the frame in which I'm going to promote this innovation digitalization is the new program of work for the Climate Technology Centre and Network. So this is a program of work that will span the next 5 years. And this is its inaugural release, really. We are showing it now to our core stakeholders, and we have engaged on behalf of the Climate Technology Centre and Network in significant outreach to inform this program. So just moving in terms of building on the value itself of the CTCN. So the first step really is to talk about where this program of work is coming from in terms of the promotion of national systems of innovation and digitalization. And that value really is around building on the proposition of the UN itself, its Climate Technology Centre and Network, as being one of the core agencies for climate change and technology implementation. And an agency that is demand-driven in terms of responding to the needs of countries and by providing tailored technology assistance, so helping countries to develop their responses and responding to their requests to mobilize the expertise to deliver climate action in terms of technology transfer and development. That will ultimately result in the creation of more economic opportunities within country, fostering endogenous innovation and entrepreneurship within the countries. And part of the technical assistance request is to support the full technology cycle, including mitigation and adaptation technologies. There's a core lens as well in terms of the technical assistance with a renewed focus on gender and youth, ensuring that they are both mainstreamed within the work of the CTCN. So let me talk about, for 1 second, this program is really based on 10 years of experience under the technology mechanism of the UNFCCC. And I'm representing a few different projects here in terms of what the Climate Technology Centre and Network has built as being the platform on which it's going to deliver this new program of work. So examples such as supporting Jamaica and Sudan in terms of innovation, or assisting Pakistan in terms of energy efficiency law, delivering SME clinics to Kenya and Tanzania, collaborating with Tongo on energy efficiency master planning, or e-mobility policies for Ghana and Zimbabwe. So you can see, just touching on all the bullet points here, that there's been significant impact in terms of technology transfer and development from the technical assistance that's been provided by the UN Environment Programme and the Climate Technology Centre and Network. And part of the flagship in terms of engagement is how closely the CTCN has worked with the Green Climate Fund to develop readiness projects that total almost 10 million in value. And that's only a small percentage of what has been leveraged in terms of the impact of those projects. So let me move to the program of work, focusing on today's real objective, which is around national systems of innovation and digitalization. So what the CTCN is trying to do here is to support parties to achieve their commitments under the Paris Agreement through the lens of technology development transfer, and how we can work closely with countries to implement their nationally determined contributions. And that is, of course, we're very aware of it. This is about improving resilience to climate change and the mitigation of climate change. We're also seeing the enablers and transformative actions as part of this program of work. And what we see in terms of the graphic on the screen are two core enablers, the reason why we're here. And both of those enablers are facilitating more systems transformation. So in terms of delivering on the program of work, those system transformations include the nexus between water, energy, and food. They include buildings and infrastructure development, promotion of more sustainable mobility in terms of transport systems, and a clear impact in terms of energy systems and responding to the needs of countries. Business and industry also play a significant role in enabling such system transformations to happen. So in terms of this work program, there is a horizontal integration of these cross-cutting issues, the cross-cutting issues of gender, indigenous communities, and youth across these 5 system transformations. The rationale of choosing these 2 enablers to facilitate and deliver on the work program is coming from not only the national designated entities of countries that have asked for these enablers to be focused, but also the guidance that's been provided by the IPCC. We've extracted a quote here in terms of the summary for policymakers, which is about addressing innovation systems that can overcome some of these impacts and leading to the global diffusion of low emission technologies. So digitalization can enable these emissions reductions, and this is a significant rationale. So let me talk a little about these 2 enablers. The first one being national systems of innovation. As an example, what the next 5 years of this program of work will show that the development of such innovation systems, examples include collaboration in terms of climate technology, research, development and demonstration, creation of the right enabling policy to incentivize innovation, and actively engaging and mobilizing the private sector to build closer collaboration. So the program of work cites really a strong number of examples of this types of innovation, but ultimately it will be developed and at a demand of the countries themselves. But what we foresee is that support to policy, institution and regulatory frameworks and planning processes are key enablers to achieve the national systems of innovation that is required. And then to the second enabler, which is digitalization, and how the program of work will explore such digital technologies and circular design aiming to reduce the global carbon footprint. So examples of such approaches to digitalization to enable system transformation include the development of early warning systems for countries, or a focus on nature-based solutions and digital technologies to support off-grid energy systems. An example of this being blockchain technologies and the collaboration that the CTCN and the Technology Executive Committee have worked on. In this regard, the CTCN should focus on promoting access to things like digital public goods, freely available software that enables the design of policies. It can also support climate risk assessments and planning for adaptation and resilience at a country level. So as I move to my final slide, it's really about understanding what impact and what are the intended outcomes of this program of work. So you can see the graphic on the left-hand side here. This is really about what impact the CTCN foresees if its actions are delivered over the next 5 years. So we're going to have enhanced capacity building and the provision of technical assistance that's tailored to national circumstances. Countries are going to become more resilient to the impact of climate. We're going to help them and collaborate with them to strengthen their ability to respond to these impacts. And an impact indicator is also going to be the reduction of greenhouse gases themselves, with ultimately contributing towards the delivery and implementation of the Paris Agreement through the stimulation of innovation. So in terms of measuring these indicators, we see a number of intended outcomes. So the CTCN will be set up for enhanced success, building on the last 10 years. And there are 3 intended outcomes that the CTCN would look to. More collaboration with stakeholders in terms of technology transfer and acceleration and development. The countries themselves, the beneficiaries of the technical assistance and capacity building, will have a clear pathway and framework in which to operate. And the stakeholders themselves within countries and within the network organizations themselves, they will have the capacity and the knowledge sharing support to enable them to deliver on their nationally determined contributions. So with that point, I will pause and hand back to you, Kirsten, for any questions or you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Matt. You're able to stay with us for the discussion now?
I am indeed, yes.
Fantastic. And can I just check, Stephen Minus, do we have you online as well?
Yes, I'm here. I hear you very well, thank you.
Wonderful. Perhaps if you're able to put the camera on, I'll invite the panelists now up and we can sit down. Maybe actually if I bring you there, thank you. Cathy, can I ask you to go there? All right, thanks. Okay, so no, actually, no, I should have rethought that. Dietram, if I can move you one on, and then we'll create some space so that we can see Matt. That's perfect. Thank you. Sorry for the strange stretch out, but at least we're creating space. So let me pick up immediately on the ambitions of the new program and the framework, and what it is that you're seeking to achieve. And one of the challenges, of course, when you set out a program, a new framework with a whole set of ambitions, and you also lay out very clearly some of the clear asks, is what happens in terms of learning from existing barriers and challenges. So Dietram, I'm going to start with you, asking about, we know we've got lots of innovations out there, they've been developed. In fact, the energy crisis is a perfect example, a case in point. Hundreds of solutions for renewable energies, and we're not managing to connect them, integrate them, and get them on the ground in time. So the barriers that you are seeing in doing this work in terms of effective deployment and implementation, in your opinion, how do we overcome barriers? And how do we overcome the obstacles and the sort of resistance systems, the immune system responses, or just basic infrastructure issues to achieve something like the ambition that's laid out here?
Yeah, so thanks a lot. Yeah, very happy to be here for the for the NDE Germany and as a tech member. And as a tech member, I must say, I think the first solution to overcome barriers is, of course, technology itself. So basically, the good news is that we see that we have now so much technologies which are actually cheaper than fossil fuels. And the faster we deploy them, the cheaper it gets. Yeah? So the key challenge is like we have an enormous emission gap, which is actually growing. But the good news is the faster we introduce those fossil-free alternatives, the faster, the cheaper we overcome as a benefit for the countries and for the global, and not even calculating carbon pricing. Yeah. So, and this basically we have, as Matt has pointed out, we have addressed in the work program now from 23 to 27 in as a technology executive, as a CTCN, as a joint work program. And in these work programs, as Matt has pointed out, we have addressed key areas which have to be addressed through these innovations, like buildings, like industry, like energy. And so basically, how can we overcome those barriers? I think the first thing is we need the right frameworks. So every country basically needs a framework that includes climate governance, a climate law, and it includes targets on a sectoral level. Yeah? So I think this is absolutely key. So we have this in the EU with the Green Deal. We have this in Germany with our target by climate neutrality 2035. And we have sectoral targets in Germany. I think this is very clear. And then in addition to the sectoral targets, we need programmatic approaches like CTCN. Hello? Yeah. So basically, and what are the key elements of the programmatic approaches? I just want, Matt has also, and so this is basically an enabling framework to trigger the change in the key industries where we need to have the transformation. And basically, some of the key elements are, for example, financing. So we need to basically make carbon emissions more expensive. So whenever, like in Europe, we have the European trading system. So carbon pricing is absolutely key. We need climate finance. So climate finance can basically kickstart the transformation, but then we need also national systems making carbon more expensive and cheaper options far cheaper. So fossil fuel options cheaper. Then basically, I think we need standards. So as Germany work, for example, we work on the Industrial Deep Decarbonization Initiative for steel and cement. So along the IEA, we have addressed basically standards for what is low carbon steel and cement. There's a clear, in IEA has a clear definition and IDDI has a clear definition basically for net zero steel and cement and low carbon steel and cement in label systems A to D. I think this is something we need to engage globally, so to understand where every country stands and where we need to go and what is the gap, yeah? To make this more clearer. And then, of course, we need the institutional capacity. We need to have NDEs. We need to have the whole system with the capacity to implement those technologies.
Thank you very much. So we are discussing, so we referred to, this is okay. So when you're referring to frameworks, what I hear is the importance of a very stable directional signal with a nested set of regulations and corresponding standards, measures, permits, the kind of the language, the taxonomy, the kind of system that allows every effort we make to go in a direction, and clearly a mechanism in terms of financing that actually starts to get some of the positive change we need. Can I ask, Surachai, you have examples, and you are working in Thailand on a number of, you've got a microphone, fantastic, on a number of examples where you're seeing the development and deployment of innovations working successfully. What are some of the key lessons that you have seen or that you have extracted from what you're doing, best practices? What can you suggest in terms of thinking about how do we scale up, particularly the deployment of innovation?
Thank you very much for the leading questions. I'd like to respond on behalf of Thailand National Designated Entity, Thailand NDE, and also Thailand National Policy Council, Office of National Policy Councils. On the view of developing countries, I think we should start from maybe the definition of National Innovation System, or NIS. As Dr. Matthew lead us about the NIS and the view of program of work of the CTCN, I think it might be lead to support technology cycle, research, development, demonstration, and deployment, some things, and also support the collaboration amongst stakeholders. In my view, in my experience, we believe on national innovation system and on the view of collaboration among universities or research government and industry and government. Some language in some country we use UIG linkage, university industrial government linkage, and some European countries use maybe triple helix, right, to work together. I think in our previous year we might, this is a point of lesson learned, maybe pitfall from developing country like Thailand. Even we are developing country, we send our talent to learn in developed country. Almost of them graduate from leading universities, and then they return to my country. They always propose the research development in like the high tech. This is a right supply push innovation and not demand pull. So I think this we should to hear from a stakeholder, from our customer, I mean from the market. So I would like to highlight our lesson learned for supply push innovation and demand pull innovation. Demand pull innovation is suitable for the country who need innovation. As I mentioned about the collaboration between, among industry, university, and government, but I think we need to add one more major component. This is global linkage or international collaboration. Like we work with the CTCN like this because this is a global value chain. For example, now in Thailand, we commit on carbon neutrality and GHG net zero emission in the near future, maybe in 2050. You know, the big player and the organization who belong to technology is private sector. So, in my opinion, we need to give the leading role or leader role for industry or private sector. University, government research organization should play the supportive role to support innovation to them. And for us, as I am come from the government office or public sector, we should play as a facilitator and to link to the global global connection, as I mentioned. Allow me to show you one example about the carbon neutrality and GHG net zero. Now, in Thailand, we aim to reduce the greenhouse gas emission in pilot sector, namely cement industry and electricity generation sector. So, this is we have the major private company. Some of them is the large or huge private company. They can play in regional, maybe in Southeast Asia. They have their own budget, they have a technology, they have their plan, but they need some support from government. For example, they need suitable regulation, law. Maybe we need to establish some sandbox for them. They need national quality infrastructure. I mean the standard and regulation to reach the standard. They need manpower, brain power to work for them, and they need large infrastructure investment. For example, if they want to use a new technology, as Matthew mentioned about the circular economy, blockchain technology, or carbon capture, utilization and storage, even hydrogen economy, they cannot invest by themselves. They need government to invest. This is a sustainable development for the country. This is last but not least, they need some financial instrument. This is not only technology by itself, because technology cannot drive by itself, but it needs innovative financial mechanisms. And again, last but not least, they need some suitable regulation and law. For example, in Thailand, we have one act. It looks like the Bayh-Dole Act in the US. This is a Research and Innovation Utilization Act in Thailand. This is a launch already to permit researchers to own their IP and to utilize their IP with some condition. Thank you very much for this. Is my first role.
Thank you very much indeed. So what you're describing, as I hear it, is the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle that need to be put together. We need the private sector and business and industry to adopt and accelerate and incorporate and get creative. We cannot rely solely on market forces in the current economic model. So we really need that complementary effort in public institutions, regulation. I noticed the sandbox mechanism, and I want to come back to that now as Stephen, when I'm about to pass to you. And this notion of research infrastructure and the relationship between research and innovation and deployment. Certainly, in my experience, rather a problematic space, because there are a lot of unarticulated assumptions about what research and innovation are in relationship to each other. Is innovation invention? Deployment is something else. When you're talking about innovation, are you talking about the transformation of people and places and economic models? And here we have a framework, a new framework agreement, really trying to put the infrastructural connections together. Thank you. Stephen, I'm going to draw you in on the question of how research plays a role in this, and the research infrastructures and research support in really feeding into the scaling and the deployment and scaling of innovation. How do you see that? What do you see as both the need for maybe paradigmatic change in the way research is involved and the opportunity within the context of the tech to make that happen?
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned, there are a lot of misconceptions about both what innovation is and where it takes place and which organizations are involved. Under the Paris Agreement, we take a fairly holistic view of innovation. We're not simply talking about new hardware or indeed new technologies. We are, of course, talking about that, but as we know, innovation is far broader. Research and development have obviously vital roles to play in all of this, and a lot of the recent work of the tech has focused on this very question. So obviously when we're talking about participants in R&D, we're talking about academia, but of course it goes far beyond that. And indeed, many of the most significant contributions to new knowledge are actually coming out of the private sector. And that, of course, has its own challenges in respect of proprietary knowledge, knowledge transfer, and all of those sorts of questions. So as my colleague from Thailand said, having the right legal relationships and legal structures in place are absolutely vital to getting the outcomes of the research to where they need to be, including in respect of public policy. Another point that my colleague made, which I'd also like to endorse, is the importance of international collaboration in terms of having RD&D that contributes in a practical sense to meaningful innovation. And the TEC's recent compilation of good practices on international collaborative RD&D sets out a lot of the considerations here, certainly far better than I can in this short intervention. But again, having the right structures in place, both at the national level and in terms of the collaboration, to get the research outcomes to where they need to be. And of course, in this context, we're talking about helping countries to deliver on their NDCs concerning mitigation and adaptation. Now, as for the TEC, and I'll close with this, we have focused in recent years on these questions, but the new work plan of the TEC for the next 5 years has a significant focus on national systems of innovation, a significant focus on the research elements of that, as does our joint work and our common areas of work with the CTCN. So this will be an area where the technology mechanism will be continuing to make its contribution. And of course, in terms of the TEC in particular, everything that we do involves the research sector, the business sector, and other observer groups through our task forces. So the TEC can be seen as an open platform that is helping to bring research relevant to climate innovation to our stakeholders to help them further the tasks of climate development and transport. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask just one question I'm deeply curious about? COVID has given us an example of breaking a lot of entrenched assumptions about speed to market and the ability to collaborate across systems that are otherwise quite sometimes divided. Have you been able to take some of those learnings into this framework and into the work plan to look at accelerating, almost emergency measure thinking to accelerate the way research gets to in-field deployment and feedback loops fast?
Yeah, it's a terrific question. I mean, the TEC, as well as every other institution, had to adapt on the fly to the conditions of the pandemic, but we've also been watching to see how very significant innovations have been brought to the market in other sectors, obviously health most prominently. And these are lessons that will inform the work of the TEC in the next 5 years. Obviously, we're in a slightly different space, but I think that some of the I think you said emergency measures that we've seen, which have been quite successful, certainly can be drawn upon in our work. And I think that the broader context for that is not just what took place in the pandemic, but this concept of mission-driven or mission-oriented innovation, which of course underpins the EU's Horizon program as well as others. And I think that as we get closer and closer to 2030, we need to adopt an emergency mindset also in the context of innovation for climate technology, for obvious reasons.
Thank you. I couldn't agree more, and I want to come back to that. But Cathy, let me turn to you. We talk about technology, and I'm very conscious when we sit in these rooms and we have conversations about frameworks and ecosystems and national systems. Sometimes it's easy to forget that we're talking about people. How do you see, as one of the key stakeholders, and we heard that this work program has identified critically stakeholders in youth, Indigenous people, women, voices that need to be at the center of decision making, also because we are thinking about the design for and on behalf of and with. What do you see as being the role that youth can contribute, formalized in this work program? And particularly, how do you see national innovation systems supporting women and young people on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. And glad to join everyone. I'm Cathy, facilitative committee member of the Women and Gender constituency, but used to represent YOUNGO, the youth constituency, in the technology mechanism meetings. So yeah, I think on this, absolutely, of course, youth, gender, Indigenous peoples, these are perhaps the three key constituencies that I advocate for in the technology mechanism since I was about a teenager. And for the first few years, I was advocating for their seats at the advisory board of the CTCN, which we got the decision in Glasgow thanks to many of you here. And so I think this is a great example showing how much the technology mechanism is paying attention, is empowering young people, women, indigenous peoples to make sure their voices and their unique perspectives and their leadership is being reflected in the CTCN's work and in the work of the technology mechanism, which I think is also perfectly reflected in this new work plan of the tech and the CTCN. And for example, in the tech work program, YOUNGO and also the Women and Gender Constituency and Indigenous Peoples have been highlighted, and also the LSIP, which is the Indigenous Peoples constituted body of the convention, have been highlighted many times. And of course, as the constituencies, we also sit in basically every single task force of the tech, so can contribute, like Dietram, like Stephen, like these tech members, on publications, all 5 pillars of the last work program, and of course, all the areas of the new work program. At the same time, tech also works on events like this. And of course, you can always see different young people joining those events, making sure their views, whether it's policy or whether it's implementation on the ground, are being reflected. And you'll hear some from my colleague Tembe in a bit as well. And also speaking about gender, of course, tech has done lots of work, thanks to our colleagues here and also more who are currently in the negotiations. So tech has been working a lot on gender mainstreaming in the past few years, and of course that the current gender composition of the tech should definitely be improved at this COP. At the same time, it's really great to see that CTCN has done, and we more than welcome to join the event of the Gender Just Climate Solutions Awards that will take place next Monday. In which is a great collaboration with the CTCN and the Women and Gender Constituency for the 7th year now. And every year we select really amazing women-led initiatives on the ground, and we empower them and also provide training and capacity building opportunities, connect them with partners of the CTCN to make sure that the gender is being mainstreamed within CTCN's area of work. And so as youth, we have youth innovation labs. We've had the one in Latin America, one in Asia Pacific, one in Middle East this year, and of course one in Africa in the past. So it's really great to see that we have this opportunity from CTCN and from tech side to empower these youth-led initiatives. And of course, more is definitely needed, and we definitely look forward to seeing more.
So let me pick up exactly on that, and I'm going to ask to all of you, so Matt, please feel free to come in as well. We're talking here about national innovation ecosystems, the technology systems, digitalization, helping countries achieve their NDCs, their nationally defined contributions. And yet we've just had a recent report from UNEP pointing out not only are those contributions deeply inadequate, but implementation of them is highly questionable and unlikely to happen. So actually we need innovation to raise the bar significantly in terms of commitments themselves, and even more significantly in terms of the capacity to actually meet them. How do you see the tech and the work of CTCN playing a role in doing that, in kind of really shifting, like I'm going to use language of kind of space jumps, warp jumps. How do we warp ourselves out of something that is asymptotic, that just kind of gets to a minimum, and that minimum isn't good enough? What can the national innovation systems do here? Who would like to answer?
I can start.
Maybe I'll...
Go ahead, Matt.
No.
Let's go, Matt, first.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. No. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, both. I think it's a really interesting question, because we have the Paris rule book in place, but now the big question is around implementation and how we accelerate that implementation. And to use kind of technology jargon, some of it might be around leapfrogging in terms of how you build scale and get that transformative impact that is required. And I think that the innovation, the development of national systems of innovation themselves can lead to that transformative change, but it does need to be scaled. So when we look at the program of work, part of the rationale for having innovation, national systems of innovation and digitalization is a method in which the financiers and the countries can actually embrace the change and build the scale and get the transformative impact that we're all so much seeking in terms of delivering on the Paris goals. There is a big gap. People are tired of planning and talking about action. What they want to see now is implementation. And really what the program of work is really trying to do is to build that level of scale, to build the level of transformative impact. So to move a project from a 2 million or 4 million euro project to a 10 million euro project and leverage the impact. And some of that is about speed to market. Some of that is around enabling the right policy frameworks and conditions and the right enabling environment to enable that scale to happen.
Thank you, Matt. Cathy?
Yeah, absolutely agree with Matt. And just want to touch base a bit more on stakeholder engagement level. Of course, there's so many opportunities that the CTCN and tech have and can explore further in terms of collaborating with the constituencies of UNFCCC, whether it's women, youth, indigenous peoples, or others like local governments, academia, and of course, private sector and other stakeholder groups. Same time, I think there are already some really good examples from tech's recent work, for example, the collaboration with IUCN, with Friends of Ecosystem-based approach, and also adaptation and the Arup work program on coastal MBS initiatives. So I think it's really amazing to see those cross-agency and cross, whether it's collaborations within the UNFCCC with other constituted bodies, whether it's with other UN agencies or it's with other IGO, NGOs. I think we truly need to bring everyone together to make sure that we achieve transformative change. And I think, Kirsten, we were in this, we've been working on some Europe's energy transition topics in the past months together, and I think it's truly that I think we have realized that we really need to bring everyone together and especially highlight the voices of women, of young people, to make sure we can achieve transformative change.
Yeah, so I think we need to get also the priorities right. So I think the first thing is really energy generation. So I think the first thing is we need to get as quick as possible yesterday away from producing electricity and thermal energy from fossil fuels. Yeah? So great examples, for example, Kenya. Kenya has now 75% of its electricity produced from renewables. Yeah? So this is a role model basically we need to be pushed through for all Africa. I mean, this is an African COP. So I think, so electricity first, and I think next we are in transport. We have electric mobility is very close or is cheaper than fossil fuels. Electric buses basically can be introduced everywhere in the world right now. Yeah? So the next one is two-wheelers in India, in China, everywhere. So I think the electrification of transport is 20% of the emissions, is the next big thing. And then industry is hard to abate, but it has a long investment cycle. So we can't wait until 2050 until we address industry. We have to address it now. So I think we need to get this right. I mean, this is now all on mitigation. I could say the same on adaptation, but I think we have to get the priorities right, and this has to be DNA of every country. Yeah.
Thank you. Surachai.
Allow me to respond on different point of view, different dimension. I would like to comment on the program of work and CTCN and tech. I think we need to understand the principle of the mandate of tech and CTCN, because tech advice and CTCN implement of the CTCN is technical assistance, not implement like the investment. So this is as we work for maybe more than 10 years for tech and CTCN, but we still have some constraint about the implementation of innovation or research and development. And again, this is a mandate of tech and CTCN. They can't work out of their mandate. So they should follow to the suggestion of COP to bridge between the technology mechanism and financial mechanisms. Like we should encourage the tech CTCN should work very close with financial mechanism and under organization under financial mechanism like Green Climate Fund to aim to investment in the technology like the sustainable project to link from the technical assistance to the invest in technology infrastructure and to move our economics in our country. Thank you.
Thank you. And you're naming a very important point, which is what is the role, again, pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, of creating the kind of guidelines, frameworks, directional signals that help investment come to the table, that help reassure and build confidence. I'm going to ask Stephen if you could just add a bit of a build on one of the things we have been discussing all morning here in the Global Innovation Hub is the critical question, particularly for developed contexts, of addressing demand, of changing what we're asking for, and addressing the effort of innovation very strongly to changing the expectations of people on living. And Surachai, you made a clear distinction on let's be careful that when we say supply and push and demand and pull, this is not the same. It's not one size fits all. There are many areas of the world where it really needs to be supply and push. But how can we leapfrog that and get that in towards regenerative thinking so that supply and push is about restoring the planet? And those technology solutions and that signal towards markets is signaling in a direction which is not simply substituting and not simply retaining a number of underpinning assumptions. This is an area where I would love to understand more about how research infrastructure and research to innovation feed really could work within the context of the tech. Stephen.
Well, one of the things, or I should say one of the advantages of an NSI approach is just that, it encourages a systemic perspective. So when we're talking about purposeful innovations that actually help us with mitigation and adaptation, we have to have regard not just to the technology ecosystems as such, but to its socio-economic context. So it is about changing behavior, it is about creating demand for certain, not just new products, but new ways of doing things, new ways of doing transport, new ways of doing energy, with energy communities and prosumers, for example, to take a mitigation example. And all of this needs a great deal of preparatory work, a great deal of consultation, and a great deal of bedding in. And none of it is what we traditionally think of as technology, but all of it is essential to creating the technological changes that we require. Now, with a body such as the tech, and for that matter the CTCN, but particularly the tech is bringing to the attention of the parties to the Convention and the Paris Agreement key developments in all of these fields. The tech has a privileged voice in the sense that it can make recommendations and key messages to the parties. Of course, its publications are directed at a far wider audience than that. But if we're talking about this process, then it is about bringing the state-of-the-art information to parties and then allowing the parties to design the future interventions under not just the technology mechanism, but the climate regime broadly. And as my colleague from Thailand mentioned, much of that has to do with our collaboration with the financial entities in this space. And that has also been a productive area of work. There's a lot more that can be done. But just having that systematic approach so that the research is not just in the lab or in the corporate campus, but it is research that is leading directly to social changes. And this, I'll close on this, at the same time, being aware that the society has to be receptive to these changes, that we are not placing an intolerable burden. This is just transition. It's being aware of the distributional effects of technological change. And this is not just a nice to have, it's actually fundamental to the success of any of these measures. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much indeed. So we're nearly finished. Just one last reflection. You're in a context of the Global Innovation Hub, part of the UNFCCC programming process, and a key part of the hypothesis for how to take forward the UN program and cooperation globally, embed innovation within that. How would you like to see, very much to the point of collaboration and of creating this kind of environment where there is a set of critical inputs and guidance given to the process on what's needed and where it's needed? How would you like to see the relationship between the Global Innovation Hub and the tech and the CTCN go forward? How would you like to see the next year of action? And that we find ourselves in Dubai next year talking about this is the way in which these have become mutually reinforcing mechanisms. Cathy?
Well,
this time we're giving it to Cathy back.
Perfect.
Great. I think, thinking COP27 and COP28, really there's a lot that's going to happen. We're going to test our new program of work, seeing so many more activities on national system innovation, on digitalization, and of course the cross-cutting 5 pillars of the technology framework being started. And I think it's just really exciting to see. And also, of course, there will probably be lots of stakeholder engagement plans. So really from my side, I'm really looking forward to see how those civil society stakeholders, especially grassroots communities, can be supported, can be empowered through the implementation of the new program of work in the next year. And we'll see what kind of, it's a testing point in Dubai at COP28 to see how much progress we've made, how many more young people from local communities and from indigenous communities that we have empowered, and to make sure their voices are being heard, and also to just give credits to their amazing initiatives and their amazing innovative ideas. So that's the point from my side.
Yeah, you go first. Yeah.
Again, I would like to repeat, technology by itself cannot cannot cope with the climate change. I think innovation need to support technology also, as the innovation hub should support the CTCN or techs in innovative ideas. As I remember, a few years ago, tech is interested to consider the role of incubator and accelerator. For example, like that, we should to use some new innovative idea and new innovation to test or to drive the work of the CTCN. Thank you.
Yeah, so we are now in 2022. 2030 we need to cut emissions by 50%. So I think it's getting very tough. And I think I would like that basically with the technology mechanism we make an impact with this, that it becomes visible basically where every country stands with regard to transformative technologies, and that we make clear linkages between the financial mechanism, between Article 2.1c and so on, that the whole financial system becomes on clear standards, becomes on track towards the target we need to reach under the Paris Agreement, mitigation and adaptation.
Thank you very much. Stephen, Matt. Go for it, Stephen first, and then Matt. We're going to last word to you, Matt.
Well, look, I would just say that I hope to see the closest possible collaboration with the Innovation Hub and the technology mechanism. Clearly, we're working on very similar topics, and I'm sure that there is scope to have very productive collaborations in the period of time ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt.
Yeah, and I would echo what the speakers have said. I would also just like to remind people that the collaboration isn't just beginning now. So the tech and the CTCN are closely working together under the technology mechanism, but also as part of our linkages with the financial mechanism. And it becomes quite clear that more action is needed. It becomes clear that as we were both developing our work programs, as in the tech and the CTCN, that we wanted to get them more aligned, because countries are looking for more policy advice to overcome the barriers, and the tech is a natural organization, an entity to help drive that. But also countries are looking for an acceleration, and that's where the CTCN would play a role in responding to their needs, because the challenges are very cross-sectoral. The challenges can evolve in terms of we need to change the way our energy systems are and our transportation systems. We need to redesign our buildings. We need to promote more nature-based solutions. So more collaboration, not only within the technology mechanism, but within the financial mechanism and the innovation hub. This is a mechanism, really. This is a way and a means of delivering on that type of scale that really we need in terms of reducing emissions and getting at least below the 2-degree temperature goal.
Thank you very much. So you've had a whole set of themes that keep repeating right throughout the day. Turn the notion of radical collaboration into something structural and practical. Make sure that what we do is try to integrate our best intentions with a set of regulations, policy, incentive mechanisms that are coherent and nested and directionally going the right way. And when we're talking about green and digital, one needs to serve the other. Digital design principles need to be serving sustainability and the transformation of ourselves. And it's fantastic to see a structure like this and the mechanisms that are being involved here, putting a work program forward that is really going in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Hi, may I have your attention, please? Colleagues, the first panel discussion on national systems of innovation, you heard different speakers express their opinion, the role of policy, the role was CTCN can play, the CTCN new program of work which focuses on two enablers, one of which is national system of innovation, the other one is digitalization. And the trick here is how to use digitalization as a technology or the technology or the digital technology to enhance and the efforts made by the countries. And let's see what different speakers have to say on this. Let me introduce myself. I am the moderator for this panel discussion. My name is Rajiv Garg, and I work with the Climate Technology Center and Network as the regional manager, the regional technology manager. In the panel we have 1, 2, 3 panelists. They are, and I would like to invite the panelists either be connected online or if they are present here, I would like to invite them. We have Cairo Enu, who is the director of GESI, and Cairo, I believe, is online. Then we have Gabriel Blanco. Gabriel Blanco is on my left side, and I'll give the floor in a short moment of time to Gabriel and all the speakers to introduce themselves before we start putting some questions. And then we have Tambe Eno, who is again online. And Tambe, can you put on your camera, please? Caro, can you put on your camera, please? Thank you. So, Gabriel, would you like to introduce yourself, and then I give the floor to Tambe and Caro to introduce?
Okay, yes, thank you. My name is Gabriel Blanco. I'm from Argentina, working at the university in Argentina on technology issues, mainly in energy, renewable energy and energy scenarios. And I'm also working in the IPCC, in particular in the technology chapter of the IPCC Working Group 3 report. And what else? Well, I used to be part of the technology mechanism for a long while as a tech chair, etc. But thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Gabriel. Yes, I still remember you were, in the earlier days, you were also in the CTCN advisory board and you were supporting the CTCN in its activities. Give the floor to Cairo. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Kara Inoue. I'm a director at GESI, the Global Enabling Sustainability Initiative. We're an industry association based in Brussels, Belgium. I come from Japan, and before that, I came from the ITU in Geneva. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Tambe, can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Tambe Honorine Eno. I'm a Cameroonian, but I reside in Belgium. I'm a PhD student in climate change and sustainable development policies, and I'm also the founder of a youth-led organization called Africa Climate and Environment Foundation, which focuses on mobilizing and empowering African youth to take actions for the climate, the environment, and for sustainable development that will help bridge the hunger and poverty gap, mitigate climate change, protect the environment, and conserve natural resources in Africa. I currently sit on the advisory board of the CTCN, representing the youth constituency of the UNFCCC called YOUNGO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, the panelists, for introducing themselves. Now, as we have seen, and Cairo, I would like to ask you this question, since you are working with GSI, which is kind of an initiative which is trying to push digital technologies, and you have been working with different digital operators, different mobile operators. We have seen rapid strides in digitalization in developing countries. Yet the real fruits of digitalization as a means of innovation are very selected. Means you have a couple of applications developed in developing countries which support issues like, pay-as-you-go model and things like that. That needs to be scaled up, but at the same time, new applications needs to be developed which facilitates more and more use of digital technologies. My question to you is, how can the private sector be engaged in scaling up these efforts?
Sure, thanks so much for that question. So at Jessie, we're really proud to be a leading association for ambitious, as you said, ICT companies, telecom companies to engage, challenge, and work with one another around some of the more challenging sustainability topics that we're facing today. So to answer your question, I'd like to present two concrete steps that the private sector is already doing and must continue to do so to scale its contributions. So first is to engage in meaningful partnerships. We're seeing a growing commitment from the private sector to collaborate with a variety of partners to create new markets and deploy frontier technologies. Right now, there are remarkable solutions and tools that are driven by the private sector, and many of these companies are our members. As an example, Dassault Systèmes in France has been working closely with NTT Smart Data and the local government in Japan to offer a scalable city platform. So this is powered by virtual twin technology and big data to help optimize projects around buildings, city management, mobility, and disaster prevention, among many other topics. So by building these virtual twins, one can simulate and explore scenarios using real-world data, testing results while managing and mitigating risks. So these cross-sector collaborations are critical to large-scale sustainable development. And the private sector needs to ensure that external stakeholders are also involved in these processes to grow and also learn together in the process. In terms of my second point, it's something that companies struggle with, and that's reporting. So whether it's science-based targets, climate-related financial disclosures, ISO, CDP, GRI, the list goes on and on. Sustainability and ESG reporting has grown into a convoluted market with ever-evolving jargons, acronyms, and language. The folks at the UNFCCC know this better than anyone. It's not only really hard for companies to keep up, but it's also tough to have the human resources to fill out forms, documents, spreadsheets. All of this accounting will really mean a revolution within companies. But this type of revolution cannot be done through technology alone. And I know that we've been saying that for many years now, and it really hasn't changed all that much. It's a mindset and cultural revolution that companies really need to accept and embrace. So to be accountable and to prove that you're truly taking action, you will need to ensure that you're engaging in regular, what we call materiality analyses, to identify the most critical items in your agenda and ensure that you're keeping all these frameworks and standards in mind as you're building out your strategy. So again, having that corporate purpose. From the Jessie perspective, it's really tough to call yourself a purpose-driven organization if you don't have a strong grasp on these frameworks. And that's exactly why, and then this is going back to my first point, collaboration and being involved in initiatives that are led by international organizations or NGOs like Jesse are critical, because you do need that subject matter expertise to help you navigate this very crowded space. And just to kind of exemplify this, a couple weeks ago, it was announced that our member, TDC Net in Denmark, is the world's first company with a scientifically based, validated net zero target by 2030. So they're a company that has presented its many projects to lower CO2 emissions for many years now. They've been largely focusing on energy optimization, replacing legacy technologies with more efficient solutions, and even establishing, I believe, 4 solar parks. So quite importantly though, and just to add, they're doing this holistically. They're looking across their value chain with targets for consumer and supplier emissions down to 0. So they're promoting this sense of shared social responsibility. They have over 3,500 suppliers worldwide, so it's a very ambitious goal, but they do it by ensuring they report to the SBTi. They conduct regular audits through what we call JAC, the Joint Audit Cooperation. They work with Jesse to lead on sustainability strategy and thought leadership. And interestingly, they host climate reporting workshops with their smaller vendors to make sure that everyone is on the same page. So for new suppliers, they also develop robust screening tools to ensure they're working with low emitters from the get-go. So in our eyes, these type of actions present what climate leadership looks like in the private sector. For Jesse, we have a lot of initiatives, we have a lot of programs, but our newest and I would say most robust program right now is Digital with Purpose, DWP. So this movement was launched in 2020, and we really wanted to make sure that it can help companies progress on the SDGs. There's a framework that measures and monitors performance in delivering digital solutions that actually have social and environmental impacts. And we're really proud with this type of work. In terms of what these targets really look at, we have 6 priority areas. Again, going back to this idea of looking at what's most material to you as a company. For us, for Jesse, we thought it made sense to look at corporate purpose, climate change, circular economy, supply chain, digital inclusion, and digital trust and responsibility. There's a lot of targets across the SDGs, but for the digital sector in particular, and for Jesse, we've narrowed it down to these 6 priority areas. In addition to that, and you can look online on our website, digitalwithpurpose.org, we also have a framework for SMEs. We want to make sure that, yes, as Jesse, we do mainly have larger companies, but SMEs have a large role to play, and that's on a global scale as well. So our framework has metrics and a scoring system for SMEs to make sure that they're a part of the conversation from the very beginning. There's a verification process, as with all of these type of frameworks, but once members are verified by an independent reviewer, they do receive a score, and there is an award process and rating process, which companies can then share with their stakeholders internally and externally, so that they can show the world and their stakeholders that they are actually taking strong actions towards corporate. So that's kind of what Jesse is doing. This is how we're challenging our corporate members to innovate and deploy technologies, again, with purpose. When we're talking about innovation and deployment of climate technologies, it's really critical to embed purpose in all of these actions. So to do that, there's great work to be done around corporate accounting, measurements, and standards, but it's important to note that there are non-technological innovations that need to be coupled with deployment as well. So the private sector really has to be on top of that so that they can facilitate that transition. Speaking as Jesse, we want to empower the private sector to contribute in such a way where positive impact is not a byproduct, but a fundamental principle. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Caro, for a detailed explanation on what the private sector is doing and how it can further enhance the work which they are doing. Definitely, there are 2 or 3 key words which I take out of your intervention and which have been also discussed and which had also come out in the earlier panel discussion, which is definitely partnership is one of it. The other important point which you came out was on cross-sectoral collaboration, which is definitely very important to make the digital technologies more usable, to make the digital technologies reach out to a number of areas where still there is some scope, specifically in the developing countries. Definitely, you also talked about the big data and also the various efforts of Jesse, which is happening in this direction. But digitalization, and this question comes to you, Gabriel. Digitalization leads to development of better business models, new applications, or a new way of doing things, more efficient way of doing things, and more developing countries are trying to catch up on that. They are developing different kind of models. They are trying to integrate the use of digital technologies in their day-to-day life. But these are all on the end side of application. But also the need of the hour is, in order to reach the target by 2050, the GHG emission target by 2050, also there is a need that some basic research happens at a country level, which is more suited for their purpose, and then the applications are developed on that to suit their local environment. What should the countries do to enhance this aspect of digitalization?
Thank you. I think you open a number of things that we can talk about with that question, and I like something that Carol said before. It's not everything about technology. What I would like to say is something in relation to digitalization and digital technologies is that as you can refer to the Working Group 3 report of the IPCC. There is a wonderful chapter on this, and what basically it says, and in relation to your question, is that digital technologies, of course, have a number of positive impacts, or have the potential to have positive impacts in relation to increase energy efficiency, for instance, or improve material inputs and the production of goods and services, of course, increase coordination in all sectors, and we're talking about agriculture, residential sector, transport, industrial, of course, and energy itself. So it has a lot of potential to reduce, not only to reduce emissions, but to reduce other environmental and social impacts. However, and this is what I would like to maybe to highlight here, it has also potential to do other things that are not that great. Observations show that there is increased demand of energy due to the digital appliances, for instance, although that is not completely certain that is happening, because at the same time there are digital devices that are taking place or can replace many other devices like a smart cell phone, etc. So it's not that clear, but apparently there is an increase of energy use due to the digital devices. But what is most important in my view, and developing countries should take care of this, and developed countries should take care of this, is that digital technologies are inducing demand for consumption of goods and services. So if that is the case, that would increase, or actually is increasing, energy use, and increasing something that is, or could be, I'm not sure to say even worse, but increase inequalities, between people that can have access to digital technologies and the goods and services behind those digital technologies, from the other ones that they don't have that access. So that takes me to this concept that for me is crucial for any technological development or technological change that we can think of, and that is a phenomenon called the rebound effect, right? And maybe someone heard about this. And rebound effect is something that is the use that we make of any new technology or any technological change. It depends on the behavior and depends on the choices that we make in relation to a certain technology. And that is, in my view, that is critical. Otherwise, we will end up having beautiful digital technologies that the only thing they would do is increase demand for goods and services, and instead of reducing the use of natural resources of all kinds, including energy, of course, and so we may end up having a worse situation than the one that we have now in that sense. So I wonder, for instance, how private sector can do about this, because all the technological changes are basically used to increase productivity and not so much to reduce resources. And so digital technologies can induce this increase in consumption and in production and consumption of goods and services. And finally, at least for now, is that perhaps, and this is not completely clear, but governance and policy can help to sort of bring digital technologies to the positive side, right? And try to avoid this rebound effect that I'm talking about. So, but that is not clear how good governance and policies can do that without getting into restrictions in individual choices or individual rights. So that is something to think about. Again, I would like to refer to the Working Group 3 report because there is a very nice discussion on all the pros and cons of digital technologies.
Thank you, Gabriel. You really raised a kind of a very a pertinent question, and personally, I have been reading some of these articles on artificial intelligence and to what extent we as a society should allow artificial intelligence to move on and where to stop. And this is a very critical decision, and you are pointing out in the same direction, giving the example of the rebound effect of how the digital technologies by itself can become a new genie which needs for which a solution is required. And thank you for pointing out to the IPCC report, which definitely also suggests some kind of a closer linkage between the science and the policy, or what kind of policy should be developed based on the science which is there, the data which is there. But I see that the demand of digital technology is going up day by day, and specifically, if you look at the service side of it, means with new interventions like new interventions in the communication technologies like the 5G and things like this, where you get a lot of flexibility on data downloading, and this would also provide a kind of a tool for better information system, because specifically if you look at the agriculture sector and in the developing countries, because of the lack of information system, or because of, means even if the countries have information system, the data is not able to reach out to the farmers who require at a particular point of time. There would be we see an increase in the use of digital technologies, and that's the positive side of it. Means probably the countries need to focus more on identifying interventions in the service area rather than in the technology itself. So these are some of the questions which are still unanswered. But building up on that, youth has a major role to play in digital technologies, or in promotion or in development of application for digital technologies. But we also see that the youth develops an application for a technology or an intervention or does an innovation. But sometimes it is not properly deployed. And my question to Tambe is, how can you facilitate this deployment of new technologies, of the innovation which have been done, or innovation which they do in a manner which can be scaled up?
Thank you very much for that question. Normally, innovations will be. Are you getting me? Okay. Normally, innovations will be very worthless if we don't devise strategies to implement them or to deploy them to the communities or countries that really need them. And youth have a very significant role to play when it comes to technology development and transfer, especially when it's relating to digital technologies. However, before we even talk about youth involvement in technology transfer or development or transfer with respect to digitalization, we have to first of all consider to categorize these youths, because youths that have exposure, or youths from the global north, will not have the same ability to transfer those technologies as youths from the global south. Even within the global south, we have youths, even I'll say within the same country, we have youths that have exposure who live in cities that can easily use those digital technologies you're talking about. And we also have youths in rural communities that are even more affected by climate change. I would need those digital technologies to adapt when it comes to, for example, dealing with early warning signals and so on. So the strategies will actually bring these youths on board and ensure that they deploy these technologies in an efficient way, or in a way that would reach a significant population. We have to consider the different we have to consider the exposed youths and the unexposed youths. Now, if we are looking at youth from the global north or youth from cities in Africa, then if a youth develops a digital technology and their target population is youth from global north and maybe exposed youth in Africa, then they can easily use social media to deploy their technology. We have, for example, there are a lot of challenges that have been brought up in social media, especially when it has to do with social influencing, for example, musics and clothing and so on, where people use TikToks and Facebook and so on to showcase what their ideas are. Youths can also use this media to actually showcase their digital technologies, you know. For example, if a youth develop a technology that can be able to determine tree cover or the number of trees that have been planted in an area, and the carbon sequestration capacity of the tree of that particular area, they can just start up with a tree planting challenge and be like, okay, this is the app. You plant one tree and then you input this data here, and this is what you're going to come up with. This is the result you're going to get from it. And before you know it, every other youth that is interested in tree planting will pick up the challenge on TikTok and other social medias and take it within to their communities. But now, when we are talking about the grassroots youths that I'm referring to, youths in the global south, those ones in the typical rural communities that are mostly affected by climate change, that would actually need to participate in such competitions, and it's not only limited to such competitions, but that would actually need to be able to interpret early warning signals and so on. How do we ensure that these youths are also able to deploy those technologies, or are also able to implement those technologies within their communities? I think when we are addressing such youths, then we have to talk about on-the-ground capacity building. Those youths have to be provided with on the ground capacity building, and I think this is something that has not been given much attention, because even the implementation bodies of the UNFCCC, the CTCN, the UNIDO, I don't think there is anybody, any institution that goes on the ground to provide those the necessary training for these young people to be able to uptake technologies and transfer those technologies within their communities or their country. So it would be great if on the ground capacity building programs can be organized, and also the technologies that are already existing that needs to be transferred to other communities, because normally a lot of these young people in such communities have great ideas that they have been implementing, but they do not have the know-how to spread this information and to, of course, attract sponsors. So if they can be able to conduct some kind of outreach programs, campaigns to showcase what they have been doing, we can have they can actually be privileged or opportunity to have some of those exposed youths that would visit those rural communities or their villages that might pick up on some of those technologies and bring them to the city and maybe take it to, or maybe assist them in applying for to showcase what they have been doing on the ground. For example, in my organization, Africa Climate and Environment Foundation, what we do is we go to typical rural communities that have no access to the internet, like no access to the digital system, and we see the kind of technologies they are implementing on the ground. We take them, we kind of record what they are doing. We take them to social media, and we also share the videos to our members that are in different countries. And before we know it, our members are also implementing the same technology in their countries, and youths that are not even within our network see them on social media and they start implementing. So it's all about trying to create a link, or trying to bridge the gap between those that can actually implement digital technology and those that cannot. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tambe. Really, in your intervention, you brought a very important point of capacity building of the youth. And capacity building in the right area, and the capacity building which has to be as per the needs of the country, as per the need of that specific community, and it has to be quite very tailor-made. And this would also facilitate them entering into partnerships and the kind of the campaign or the knowledge which needs to be spread from one community to the other, so that the best practices are adopted, and also the technology is transferred. Definitely, it's a very important point for the youth. Capacity building specific technology applications or in implementation of the technology is a great need. There have been some interventions by the government themselves by establishing some institutions, technical institutions, which do provide capacity building or enhance the skills of the youth and the younger generation. But I feel that even the global community needs to link with these kind of efforts, and this point, the national systems of innovation can play a very critical role, because national system of innovation would also create these kind of networks. And when you create these kind of networks, you create more partnerships, and you build more capacity in the countries. So the point which you are making on capacity building is directly also linked to the national systems of innovation, which the previous panel had discussed a lot about. So, and you are kind of supplementing their point. So thank you for bringing this out and flagging it in a very clear manner. I would like to also give the opportunity to the crowd which is present here if they would like to ask any questions to the panelists. Yes. Please introduce yourself and ask the question.
Thank you very much. Very interesting panel. My name is Vimal Mahendru. I'm the special envoy for an organization by the name of International Electrotechnical Commission based out of Geneva. This organization is more into making electricity, electronics, digital technologies work for the global population through international consensus standards. So my question to all panelists, one, it was very interesting to hear from you how digital technologies and innovation you're taking worldwide to really build an inclusive movement. But how do you take it really global? You know, if you can add a perspective, every country is at a different stage of its digital transformation. And what role do you see for international consensus standards in this journey? Thank you.
So, who would like to take the first shot? Jesse?
Perhaps I can start?
Yep.
Sure. Thanks so much for that question. In a really quick answer, research. Talking about policy instruments and research for innovation, one thing that's really important to accelerate, in my personal view, is that government intervention through funding for institutes, universities, research grants, this is really the critical thing. Jesse is a European-based organization. So right now, alongside the European Telecoms Association, ETNO, Digital Europe, GSME, and Digital SME Alliance, we're working with the European Commission on this project called the European Green Digital Coalition, so EGDC. The grant gave us about 1.2 million euros. And the main aim really is to maximize the sustainability benefits of digitalization within the ICT sector, while also supporting key goals of other sectors, the verticals, so energy, transport, agriculture, construction, among other things. So what we need to find out is, firstly, what does it mean? What is the definition of a green digital solution? What does it mean for a technology to be green? Are they backed by science? Are we using science-based methods to really estimate the reduction and avoidance of GHG emissions by specific ICT tools across sectors? We have 36 companies that are a part of this. A lot of them are global technologies, and they're contributing in working groups, providing case studies. And we have our technical team from the Carbon Trust and Deloitte to make sure that these calculations are science-based and on target in terms of what our definitions and methods are. But again, this is for the European Green Digital Coalition. Without case studies, without actual implementation on a global scale, it's a very limited conclusion. So you need to have these policy interventions and these open networks, global networks, the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub, to make sure that whatever solutions are being done or whatever methods are being done on one particular region can also be applied in other regions. And academia is very important for that. This is exactly why we have something like the EGDC, to make sure that the experts, so we have our advisory board as well for the EGDC, they're the one coming in as well to make sure that beyond the corporate case studies and the KPIs that the companies have been providing alongside us as Secretariat, and in addition to the technical team, we have our experts who are spread all over the world, who are keeping an eye on the work, making sure that we're really on the path that we want to be. But again, that's because we got funding from the Commission. We've been very lucky to be able to get that funding. But nonetheless, that just goes back to my point of making sure that governments are very much involved from that initial stage of research. It is the one that is most likely to have a lot of failures, realistically speaking. So government intervention is really critical for that.
Thank you. Tambe, would you like to take a shot? Just very 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, this is what I've always been, the question I've always been asking, like we are at different level of development and our needs are completely different. If we look at most of the technologies that have been, they are being focused, like they want to transfer to the global south or the countries that really need technology transfer. Most of those technologies cannot be easily uptake in those communities or those countries. I'm still going to quote the digital system, the digitalization and so on. You cannot take digital technology to a community that doesn't have access to electricity. If the technology is using an app, how are they going to be able to use that app? So I think before we start talking about transfer of digital technologies and so on, we should first of all try to address underlying problems or those challenges those communities are still having, to bring them up to a certain level, up to a certain standards before we start talking about introducing certain technologies to them. So what are some of those challenges that these countries are still experiencing? What are we doing to actually address those challenges? Then we can start talking about transferring digital technologies to them. Thank you very much.
Gabriel?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's a good one, and I do believe that is the way to make these digital technologies or any other kind of technologies and diffuse those globally is through more or a different kind of international cooperation. The kind of international cooperation that we receive in our countries, in developing countries in general, is basically to establish the ground for making new business, which is not necessarily bad, but it's not enough, because for many there are many developing countries that are not good for business, and for different reasons, and so I think, and we've been discussing this, a new way or a new form of international cooperation that is more an exchange of experiences, exchange of knowledge, and a truly willing to help others, and through international cooperation. If new business come after that, great, that's good for everyone, but it's not just the kind of international cooperation that we do have in general or we are receiving in our countries, and it's, well, exactly that. It's not about just receiving, it's just exchange, again, knowledge and experiences, and among all participants, all countries or all institutions that participate in that international cooperation. So I do believe that a different kind of international cooperation is possible, and that would help to diffuse not only digital technologies but other technologies that are needed in every part of the world.
Thank you, Gabriel. I would also like to bring the CTCN experience here, what we do on supporting these kind of things. They are small developing countries, small economies, and until and unless you are able to aggregate the market, there is no rapid pickup of technologies. Now, definitely there are some commissions which are trying to aggregate the market, and countries are entering into free trade agreements and things like that. But also the thing is that you need to have harmonized standards and policies. And as CTCN, we have been working on harmonization of standards and policies using a kind of a regional or a sub-regional approach. And the effect of this is that it is able to consolidate the market. It provides a better incentive for the private sector to come in and invest, and also for the technology to take up, scale up, and expand it. So this is one additional aspect of technology, or what you are talking about, how you can go globalize this. Definitely you cannot globalize every technology. There has to be some kind of a difference, otherwise it will create a kind of a market monopoly. But at least the standards could be harmonized, the standards should be at least at a regional basis, and that provides a more like an incentive for the private sector for larger investments. And thank you for this question. I think it was a very important point which was brought up. We are at the end of our session. I would like to thank all the panelists and the participants, those who are following us virtually. I can see on the screen some of you are following us virtually, so thank you very much for that. And if there are any additional questions or follow-up, please feel free to write to the Global Innovation Hub of the UNFCCC. We will try to respond to you as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.